In recent months, a tectonic shift has been taking place on the African continent, largely unnoticed in Washington, but already capable of shaping the future global order. Step by step, China is pushing the United States and Europe out of Africa, turning this region into one of the key pillars of a new world system. According to Financial Times and the South African outlet Mail and Guardian, a number of countries, including Nigeria, Ethiopia, Algeria, and Senegal, have publicly declared their interest in joining BRICS. Behind the scenes at African summits, there is increasing talk of a new bloc of the future in which Africa sees itself not as a junior partner of the West, but as an equal ally of China and India. Insiders familiar with diplomatic negotiations told Reuters that Beijing has for several months operated a special coordination center responsible for integrating Africa into the BRICS system. Chinese officials describe this process as the restoration of historical justice, when countries that were for centuries objects of colonial exploitation now for the first time gain the chance to play an independent role in global politics. Europe, once treating Africa as its domain, has now been effectively written off. European Union infrastructure projects are frozen, and even French companies that for decades controlled West Africa's energy sector are losing ground to Chinese corporations. The Washington Post recently wrote in an analytical article that the administration of Donald Trump has effectively abandoned Africa as a priority region. The White House is convinced that the United States lacks the resources to wage a trade war with China, prepare for confrontation in Taiwan, and at the same time, invest in Africa. But according to experts from the Atlantic Council, this is a strategic mistake. Africa is not only home to massive reserves of raw materials, from cobalt to lithium, but also represents a potential market for its billion-strong population. By leaving this region to China, America is effectively giving Beijing the opportunity to control the future of global supply chains. China, meanwhile, acts with remarkable consistency. In the years 2024 to 2025, Beijing invested tens of billions of dollars in megaprojects, from high-speed railways in Nigeria to the construction of Africa's largest hydroelectric power plant in Ethiopia. Bloomberg notes that loans and investments are paired with political agreements. African leaders receive infrastructure and jobs, while in return they pledge to support Beijing's initiatives on international platforms, including votes at the United Nations. This is already yielding results. In the Human Rights Council, where the West tried to push a resolution against Chinese policy in Xinjiang, the majority of African countries voted against it. For Trump, this situation is becoming a trap. On the one hand, he builds a rhetoric of America first and promises voters to focus on domestic problems. On the other, ignoring Africa turns the United States into an observer rather than a player. According to sources cited by Nikkei Asia, Chinese diplomats openly say that by the year 2030, Africa will become a fully integrated part of China's economic belt. And if this scenario materializes, then BRICS will indeed turn into a force comparable to NATO and the G7 combined. The arithmetic is simple and frightening for Western analysts. If China secures Africa firmly within its orbit, the combined population of BRICS countries will exceed 75% of the world's population. These are not just numbers. They represent the future labor market, the future consumer, and the future supply of raw materials. The Wall Street Journal writes that major American corporations are already worried. Coca-Cola, Ford, and General Electric are losing contracts in Africa that are going to Chinese competitors. For American business, this is a warning signal, but the White House still prefers to look away. Western intelligence agencies are also sounding the alarm. According to Der Spiegel, German analysts point out that China is using Africa as a geopolitical foothold to push the United States and Europe out of key regions, ranging from the Middle East to Latin America. In this strategy, Africa plays the role not just of a resource source, but of a new allied bloc ready to support Beijing in all major future conflicts. Economists at the International Monetary Fund privately admit that if China continues to expand its presence at this pace, in just 5 years the West will be unable to compete for the African market. This is precisely Trump's main mistake, underestimating a region capable of shifting the balance of power. Today, Africa seems to be breaking old chains and entering a new era. Europe is no longer an authority here. America is merely an echo of the past. China comes not with lectures on democracy, but with roads, power plants, stadiums, and loans. African leaders, and most importantly the African people, see this and make their choice. In Beijing, this is called soft absorption. In Washington, a strategic disaster. But the fact remains, Africa is moving ever deeper into China's orbit. If this continues, BRICS will become an unbeatable force, uniting not only Russia, China, India, and Brazil, but an entire continent with a billion-strong population. This is a challenge that America is not yet prepared to meet. Special attention deserves how China, through the Belt and Road Initiative, is reshaping the map of Africa. According to the South China Morning Post, in 2024 alone, Beijing allocated more than $30 billion for new transport corridors. The most striking example is the Addis Ababa-Djibouti Railway, already called China's artery in Africa. It connects landlocked Ethiopia to one of the region's most important ports, giving Beijing control over a key trade route and access to the strategic Red Sea coast. Equally significant is the Lamu port project in Kenya. According to Bloomberg, Chinese companies are constructing the port, which is already being called Africa's Shenzhen. Lamu is intended to become a hub for all of East Africa, alongside pipelines, power plants, and highways in the region. For Kenya, this means tens of thousands of new jobs, and for China, the opportunity to secure military and economic presence in the Indian Ocean. American experts at the Rand Corporation warn, Beijing is turning infrastructure projects into strategic influence bases. Energy is another crucial element. Chinese corporations are actively investing in solar and hydroelectric plants. The largest project is the Renaissance Dam in Ethiopia, financed through Chinese loans. According to the Financial Times, this facility will provide the country with up to 6,000 megawatts of electricity, completely changing the region's energy balance. Europe no longer funds such projects, and the United States does not even consider them. Africa sees the difference. Beijing builds, Washington lectures. Western media increasingly publish alarming reports that China is gaining a resource carte blanche on the continent. According to the New York Times, more than 50% of cobalt production in Congo is already controlled by Chinese corporations. Cobalt is a key element for batteries and electric vehicles. In fact, Africa today determines who will lead the global energy sector of tomorrow. By consolidating its presence in Congo, Zambia, and Mozambique, China gains an advantage that could cost the United States entire industries. At the same time, African countries are for the first time feeling politically confident. South African President Cyril Ramaphosa recently told CNBC Africa, "BRICS for Africa is not just a bloc. It is a chance to speak on equal terms with the West." These words immediately spread across African media, reflecting a general sentiment. The continent now has a choice, and this choice increasingly favors Beijing. Insiders familiar with the State Department tell Politico that Africa is gradually slipping from the United States' grasp. Trump, focused on tariff wars and domestic politics, has effectively left the region without a strategy. Meanwhile, Africa could become the very stage where the rules of the global economy in the 21st century are decided.